Okay, so I did a video, my last video actually, about the first 70 pages of this book, Gardens of the Moon by Steven Erikson, and is part of the Malazan series. Basically, my biggest criticism in that video, which is probably something that I should have been a little bit more nuanced about, I'll be honest with you guys, I didn't expect that video to do anywhere near the views that it's doing now. The 1,000+ views that it has, that's growing basically every day, I didn't expect that. I expected it to do like the rest of my videos, get like under 100 views, and then, you know, maybe a couple of the fans would pick up on it, and then they would call me an idiot for not liking their badly written book, and then they would move on with their lives, right? I just turned it on, started rambling, and that was it. I just wanted to ramble about a book that frustrated the crap out of me, because I do not think that it is good writing technique to confuse your readers, and as some people would go on to tell me, confuse your readers purposefully. Now, outside of the transphobic, fatphobic, and other remarks toward my intelligence, actually quite a few of the fans have presented really fun discussion points. I know that it may not seem like it in some of my replies because I do curse a lot, but I actually have enjoyed speaking with some of the fans of this book as to why they disagree with me. In fact, the top comment on that video is a comment that completely disagrees with me, and that's fine. I think that part of the fun about enjoying art and consuming art is having disagreements on what you think makes good art. But I just wanted to address some of the stuff that's been being said on that video, and I wanted to give a little bit more of a nuance of this book and why it pissed me off so much, and why I still maintain that it's bad writing practices. And I wanted to do it in a little bit more constructed way. I didn't write a script because I'm still too lazy to do that, but yeah, let's just go over a little bit some of the things that have been said in response to that video, and why I still do not buy that this is a well-written book. So the first thing I want to point out is that, first thing I want to address is that people have been like, oh, you need to extend your reading palette, or you need to read books that are not just made for children. And guys, I know I brought up the inheritance cycle and Harry Potter in that series, but it was just like 2 examples of things that I've read. That's not all I've read. I have 2 entire shelves full of books back. Look, I have 2 entire shelves full of books back there, and that's not even close to what I have consumed in my life. Okay, I have read as much classical literature as you can imagine. I have read dense books. I have read books that contain a lot of information. Okay, I have read a lot of stuff. I am not some idiot who's only read like 3 books in my life, and 2 of them were Dr. Seuss. Okay, second of all, calling the inheritance cycle a book for children just shows me you've never read the inheritance cycle. Yeah, great, dude. A book for children, book series for children. Nothing children like better than the harsh realities of war, slavery, torture, and the gruesome depictions of death and baby killings, and yeah, great children's series. In any case, I'm not an idiot, okay? I'm not a stupid ass, alright? I get it. This book is complicated. But here's the problem. Complicated is fine. Complicated, before somebody has the chance to care about your story, your characters, in your world, is not. One of the first things you are taught in any creative writing class, hell, in English class, a stand-up comedy class, any kind of class that teaches you how to tell stories, one of the first things you are taught is that in order for your reader to want to consume your story, you have to make them care. Here, I'll give you an example. I'm going to tell you a story off the top of my head in the exact style that Steven Erikson tells his story. Are you ready? Yesterday, John came to my house telling me that he was intent on marrying Christina, a member of the Silver Hand. Christina comes from the village of Corn after the Great 17th War. The 17th War was the result of the death of Kyle, who's a member of the Crimson Foot Fetish. But Jonathan doesn't matter, even though he loves the Crimson Foot Fetish, and Kyle, Christina's beautiful eyes are just so amazing. But before he can marry Christina, he must travel to Mountain Duzabin, and after he gets over there, he has to fight Rawgorg, the great moon lord of the 7th century. What does any of that mean? Who are these people? None of you know, and therefore most of you don't care. Maybe it is a compelling story. Maybe beneath the surface of that opening is a compelling love story about someone who has fallen in love with his best friend's murderer, who then has to conquest a great journey to not only overcome a challenge that she wants him to do, but also conflict with his own feelings about falling in love with his best friend's murderer. You'll never know, because most of you wouldn't read past that point. Most of you wouldn't care. Most people wouldn't care, because that's bad storytelling practices. Instead, the story should open up with a little bit about John and a little bit about Christina and tell you a little bit about their lives and their relationships with each other before later on dropping the bombshell of who she really was. I read a book earlier this year called Spells for Forgetting. And one big major thing the book does is it sets up several mysteries and references several events without context that you get later on. You later on learn about that end up raveling and tying the whole story together, right? That's good. That's good. Mysteries are good. Things without context are good. But before it provides you really any of those, it instead will give you like one mystery, but then gives you a character for you to care about. Then eventually it gives you another mystery, then another character to care about. And it makes you care about your world. In the first 70 pages, we meet 4 freaking people. No, sorry. We meet like 10 people. We get the story perspective of 4 people, but we meet like 10 different people, 12 even, something around there. We're given the name of like 6 different events. We're told about like 2 different wars. We're told about like 10 different cities. There's just too much. There's too much information at one time, and not being able to, not liking that, not being able to handle that is not a sign of a lack of intelligence or not being well read or not have read enough complicated books. Not liking that is basically what most readers do. Another thing people like to bring up is that this is apparently a very popular series. I don't care, guys. Harry Potter is a popular series, and it's very badly written as well. Let's not pretend for even a fraction of a second that Harry Potter does not have some of the worst world building in literature history, okay? Harry Potter is horribly written, horribly crafted. Let's not even pretend for a moment. But that brings us to another point. Just because I called this bad, doesn't mean I'm calling you bad. Doesn't mean I'm calling Steven Erikson a bad person. I just think he's a bad author. And it's okay to like bad things. I like Harry Potter, despite the fact that it's a shittily written series. You know what else? I like Breaking Dawn, despite the fact that it's a shittily written series. You're allowed to like badly written things and admit that they're bad. But if you don't think that's bad, that's also okay. But I'm sorry, I just cannot see a world where people are justifying that not knowing what the hell is going on in the beginning of the story is a good thing. You have to have something to tether your reader to. You have to have something for your reader to latch onto to care. Again, if he would have stuck with like Gnos, right? Gnos is the character you meet in the prologue. We jump ahead 7 years to when he's like 19, and he's a lieutenant in the army and everything. And there's this really good setup with his family, where like he was disowned from his family, and he had to come back home to see his sisters and things like that. There's a really good setup with that, and I was actually very, very excited to see where that went. I wanted to see where Gnos's family ties went and how he would come to know the adjutant, because there's a really interesting setup as well. There are some characters in here, there are some people in here that I do care about finding out what happens to. Gnos, the adjutant, the little fisher girl, these are all very good. But what lost me was when we're in the middle of this story, we're in the middle of learning about these people, and we're just starting to get invested in them, we jump to Tattersail, which is a whole nother person that we have no idea who it is. We have no context for where she was, and I didn't know what was going on through half of that chapter, because let's be completely honest with ourselves, No one's gonna know what's going on through half that chapter, because it starts with Tattersail on a mountain of bodies and her talking to some dude named Hairlock, thought you were dead, felt lucky today, or whatever, right? And then, quite literally, quite frankly, out of nowhere, they start talking about tunnels and a monstrous monument that suddenly falls when the tunnels collapse, and then we jump to a few hours prior to tell the story of how she ended up on the mountains of bodies. This would all be well and good, but it all jumps from thing to thing, place to place, name to name, so ungodly fast. I think the bigger point that I should have made was that the pacing of the information is not good. It's fine to have information that you find out about later, but if you don't give your reader time to care about what is being said, if you don't give your reader time to understand what is being said, then you're not going to connect with many readers. Yeah, maybe this is a popular series. Sure, I guess most every book somewhere has a huge following, because every book is going to talk to somebody on some level. But the truth of the matter is that this book just doesn't do it. And I find it really weird how people were like, well, look at all the people disagreeing with you, when there were people who actually finished this book who agreed with me. One person even said that they rated it the lowest they possibly could on some website that I could tell, because there's a lot of stuff that completely goes unexplained, like the magic system. Can I talk to whether or not that's fact? No, but the point of the matter is that some people literally could not get invested in this book. The last thing I want to talk about is people who are saying things like, oh, it's intentional, and oh, it's the background for his game world. Okay, I never said it was an accident. And I don't think that he just knocked the quill over and it spilled onto the paper and came out like this. Like, I understand it's probably intentional, but it's intentionally bad. It's intentionally annoying. You know, people were like, oh, you can't, like one person said, oh, you can't be a sponge, or you can't be a brick, you have to be a sponge. What does that even mean? It reminds me a lot of Erickson's writing. It's just a bunch of word salad. It's meaningless dribble. I don't know anything that's happening, not because I'm not trying to absorb the information, but because the information is not being explained well. Imagine a teacher trying to teach history. Oh, this is a great example, right? Say you're trying to teach about a historical event, D-Day. Just to pick one, right? You're trying to teach about D-Day. And instead of just telling people about the main players in D-Day and why D-Day happened, you go off on a bunch of side tangents about tangentially related historical figures that have really nothing to do with D-Day outside of a very vague connection. Actually, a better thing would be people that don't matter. Let's say you're talking about D-Day and then you suddenly go off on a tangent about George Washington. That doesn't make any... You know what I mean? It's one of those things where the writer jumps information too much. He jumps places too much. I'm actually going to tell you exactly where I gave up. Thousands upon thousands of great ravens, they must have nested among the crags and pocks of the moon's surface. Their shrieks grew more defined, a caterwaul of outrage. They wheeled out from the moon, their 15-foot wingspans catching the wind and lifting them high above the city and plain. Fear lurched into terror in Tattersail's heart. This isn't where I stopped. I didn't stop at that sentence. I stopped at the bottom of the page. But the reason I'm bringing this up is, why do the ravens matter? What the hell is a great raven? Do we know? Will we know? No. The moon's surface is another example. They keep talking about the moon's lord, the moon's spawn. What is the moon that they're referring to? Because obviously it's not the actual moon in the sky. It sounds like it's a city, but I don't think that's right, because they referred to the city as something different earlier on. I just don't remember what it is. So it sounds like maybe it's a castle. Maybe. We don't know. The moon's lord responded. A black, writhing wave rolled down the first hill. Fuck's the first hill? What are we talking about? The high mage was buffeted to his knees, deflecting it. The hilltop around him blighted as the Necrois power rolled down the slopes, engulfing nearby ranks of soldiers. Tattersail watched as a midnight flash swallowed the hapless men, followed by a thump that thundered down the earth. When the flash dissipated, the soldiers laid in rotting heaps, mowed down like stalks of grain. Here's where I got annoyed. Kurland Galen Sorcery, Elder Magic, the Breath of Chaos. By this point in the book, page 71, by this point in the book, I have now heard about 8 different things about sorcerers and magic and all of this stuff, and basically none of it is explained. Basically, none of it is given context, none of it is explained, and it is so frustrating. And the thing is, too, is that I also like Tattersail's story. I actually like the idea of a mage who had a lover, and then in what is essentially an instant, it was like more like an hour or two, but what is essentially an instant, everything gets ripped from her. But you know what's crazy to me? Is I feel like I can't get attached to this character, because how long was it going to be before he jumped to somebody else? So we get attached to Tattersail. I'm actually going to skip ahead a little bit here, past where I have read. If we jump to chapter 3, we immediately go back to Gnos. So there's a lot of jumping back and forth, and in the first couple of chapters, I can't get down with that. A great example of how to jump perspectives is, again, I'm going to reference the inheritance cycle, is in Eldest. In Eldest is the first time that we get jumping perspectives from Poloni. Before we even jump perspectives for the first time to Roran, we get a lot of Aragon's story since the last book. We have time to get used to the fact that we're in a new story with a new person before we jump to a different perspective. And the way that Poloni jumps perspectives is a good way. He gives you time to get attached, learn the stories, learn the characters, feel their feelings, feel their understandings before he jumps again. And that's something that Erikson just doesn't do. He jumps perspectives too quickly, and while he's jumping perspectives, he's providing too much information. This is not good storytelling. Again, if you like it, that's fine. If you enjoy it, that's also fine. But pretending like it's good storytelling to constantly feed information to the reader before they have a chance to care about what you're talking about, I just don't get it. And to everybody who I pissed off, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I insulted what is apparently your favorite series, but even some of the comment sections were basically saying that they liked the book, they loved the book. One person said, "It's my favorite series, but I wouldn't recommend it to someone unless I want them to suffer." Basically admitting that this is a impenetrable fucking book. And that's not good, guys. That's not good. This has nothing to do with intelligence. It has to do with digestibility. You need to make your stuff digestible. Many people were saying that they made it through the book, but they had to keep rereading sections of it because it's just so freaking dense with information that it doesn't need to be that way. There are 10 books in this series. There's 10 books in this series. You're telling me that you had to cram all this information into just this book? What do you mean? Brother, if you need to, write another book. It's okay. If your series is good, if it's well told, then people will buy the rest of the books. People will want to read. They'll want to continue the adventures of Gnos and Tattersail and that. But you don't do that by shoving every little piece of mitochondrial information into the first few pages. This is let me get past the glossary here. This is a 488 page book. I'm sorry, I was reading the last few sentences. I got distracted there for a second. This is a 488 page book, and if the entire book goes by the first 70-ish pages, I'm going to guess that there's enough information in this book to fill up 2 or 3 books. I'm gonna guess that there is enough crap thrown at the reader to fill up multiple books. And I'm gonna just say it, I don't care if it gets better later on. I don't care if after dredging through the most dense opening to a book I've ever seen, it gets better later on, because that doesn't matter. There are plenty of books out there, plenty of stories that have complicated narratives and complex mysteries and a lot of locations and a lot of names and a lot of characters who do this so much better than Erikson does. I just cannot get behind this outstandingly dense crap and pretending like it's good storytelling, because it isn't. Any other medium you try to tell a story like this, people are going to get frustrated. Movies, TV shows, music, stand-up comedy, video games. Video games are a great one. People freaking hate video games that start out with way too much goddamn information that you have no context for. Because how are we supposed to care if you don't give us time to care? If the first, 4 chapters had been dedicated to Gnos and his family trouble and his life with the adjunct and things like that, and then it jumps to Tattersail and tells about her story and what's going on during that time and things like that, then I would have been much easier on it. The fact of the matter is that the pacing of the information being given to you is bad. It's info dumping at its worst case. Now, I'm not going to make another video on this regardless of the responses in the comments section, but what I do want to say is I want to thank the people who were civil in their disagreements with me, the people who approached this with a little bit more decorum than immediately calling me stupid. And of course, there were people who were transphobic and fatphobic, and one person weirdly insulted my Yu-Gi-Oh! Blanket. Sorry for having memorabilia from my childhood, you dick. In any case, I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and if you're a fan of the Malazan series, great. I'm happy you are, but I'm not. Screw this book. Okay, bye.